Welcome back to Under the Pink. I'm Kristen, your resident music obsessed ADHD autistic, and this is our first bonus episode. It's also the first episode that will be available on YouTube, so go check that out at Under the Pink 7 if you want to follow along. This one is going to be a very Taylor-centric episode because I want to talk about some anonymous messages that were submitted to a Tumblr blog last May and the likelihood that they were submitted by someone on Taylor's team or someone close to her. Okay, I know that sounds crazy, but don't write it off just yet. These are messages written as mini short stories, using a lot of metaphors and analogies, but telling a very clear story, purportedly about Taylor Swift and everything that's happened to her over the last several years. The author does not claim to be Taylor, and they signed them with a jackolantern emoji. They were submitted anonymously over a few days, about a week after news of Maddie Healy and Taylor hit the internet in May of 2023. When I first heard about them, I wrote them off as being fakes. However, they resurfaced again on my corner of the internet in October, and as soon as I read them again, they felt very authentic to me. I'll explain why in a minute, but I need to preface this by saying that these were submitted to a Kaler blog, one with a pretty problematic history. For that reason, among others, most people discounted these messages, even once they resurfaced. I don't want to get into the history of that blog here, but the user What I Will Say on Tumblr has a post with receipts and proof. If you just search What I Will Say spaderiddles, then you can get the information there. If you happen to be familiar with ttpd, which is a really old Kaler blog that dates back to like 2013, 2014, it's the same person. They just rebranded after ttpd was banned by Tumblr. Anyway, I do think there is a reason that these stories were submitted there, and to me, it's not because Taylor and Carly are together. Honestly, it's pretty simple. If they were submitted to a regular Tumblr blog or a mainstream Swiftie account, they would definitely be written off as fake. Or if they did catch on, they would go mega viral and hit the front page of all the news websites. The Gaylors at that time were very concerned about Maddie's problematic behavior and would probably write these messages off as well, just like most of us did back then. This particular blog has been around forever, and they have a following that would believe in the messages and keep them alive regardless of the Maddie situation. The messages would continue to be discussed and analyzed by that relatively small group until the point when enough time had passed that some of the lines in the stories would line up with Taylor's words and actions, and then they would gain a wider audience, which is exactly what happened. This is what I personally believe, but if you choose to believe that they are Kaler-based messages, then that's okay too. This is just my interpretation, and the focus of this episode especially is to show the parallels between the messages and the lyrics of the vault tracks in ttpd, as well as music videos and other things that do line up exactly with the stories and the messages. So, just a little about the lens that I'm viewing these messages through. I've been a fan of Taylor since debut. I attended her Fearless and Speak Now and Red tours, and I started looking into what I call the New Romantics about a year and a half ago. If you want more info on that, check out the first 2 episodes. But about 10 months ago or so, I started researching her career history, her interviews, etc., as if I was going to write a book or record a podcast, which, spoiler alert, it's both. Most information that is in the media and the public narrative about Taylor is just blatantly incorrect or incomplete, which is honestly surprising for someone as publicly discussed as Taylor's always been. Anyway, I started to put together a timeline in my head of things that I thought had happened in Taylor's personal life and career that are not part of the public narrative. We've talked about it some on my TikTok and definitely quite a lot in my Patreon. But let me give you a quick breakdown of what that looked like to me. Remember, this is all my own theory and speculation, but it's based on literally hundreds of hours of research. But I am not saying that this is true or fact, all alleged. In my opinion, there is something that Taylor has not been able to speak about for a very long time. She's indicated this in countless lyrics and interviews. I personally think that it's extremely likely that she is a queer person who has been closeted by the industry and at times herself, but I also think that it is something much bigger than that. Tortured Poets viewed through this lens seems to confirm that theory. I believe that something really shifted for Taylor around the time that she turned 18. I do have a whole TikTok series about this, and I'll link it below. But something else major changed for Taylor sometime between 2009 and early 2011. Perhaps it's the Kanye VMAs incident, maybe the spotlight of fame, maybe something more. But this was also the time that she was writing Red. And clearly, whatever she had written about in that record was extremely traumatizing for her. I personally don't think that it was simply a relationship with Jake Gyllenhaal. I think that it was likely also industry related, but obviously we don't know for sure. Either way, she continues to call us back to the Red era over and over, and especially to All Too Well. There's definitely more to that story, in my opinion. In the Red era itself, she also entered into her very first public relationship with Harry Styles, like the first really public relationship, and also whatever that was with Connor Kennedy and the PR of all of that. It's my opinion that whatever happened during this period had a great effect on Taylor and Harry both. They have constantly referred back to this time, particularly 2012. I believe that this is when they originally plotted to band together to eventually reveal things about the industry, and likely about themselves, possibly the earliest version of the New Romantics. Taylor switches things up for new eras, obviously, but for this era, she fully switched up her aesthetic and her mannerisms, and this was her first really drastic switch. She went to straight hair, became very prim and proper, dressed like a 1950s housewife, which she has called us back to multiple times, notably in her NYU speech, but also in the 1950s gymnasium in Suburban Legends and the 1950s shit in Lavender Haze. While formerly kind of a wild child on stage with her crazy curly hair, dramatic performances, her countless off-the-cuff radio interviews, and seemingly more personal music videos, in the Red era, she became a lot more tightly controlled. This was likely due to the media response to her love life and to her songwriting and singing abilities. Despite her big aesthetic shift in the 1989 era, the control she had over her public narrative and what was said about her continued. I personally think that when Taylor moved to New York, she had plans to be more authentic, and she also, of course, completely shifted genres against the wishes of her record label. In 2016, she showed signs of a new era coming, what we all now know as karma. And I think that whatever she was planning for that era, combined with whatever was happening behind the scenes with her label and other things she may have been involved with, led to her big cancellation. Remember that Kanye was working very closely with Scooter Braun at that time, who had already expressed interest in purchasing Big Machine, which, of course, is Taylor's old record label. I think that much more went on behind the scenes there than any of us know, and that's why she refers to that time over and over. It's bigger than Kim Kardashian, a phone call, and some snake emojis, in my opinion. Along with some other truths, I do think this is a time when she had officially planned to come out as bi or queer in general. But whether you think she's queer or not, I do think some things were going to be exposed that someone didn't want out there. After that, I think she went underground for a while, planned Reputation, and then executed it. But then the same thing happened again in 2019 with Lover. I didn't come up with the failed coming out theory, but I do believe it. Although, again, I think that wasn't the entire story. I think more was planning to come out around that time. But again, she had to pivot. Then she had to cancel Loverfest, and she wrote Folkmore, processing the entirety of everything that had happened in her career and her personal life, all of it up until that point. That's also when I think she got together with more artists and created this iteration of the New Romantics. But this time around, I think they had learned that they had to move in secrecy and hide in plain sight, because Taylor has a lot of influence, and she always has. Every time that she has started to speak up for the rights of others, be involved politically, or talk about things happening in the industry, she has had her legs cut out from underneath her. All the wisest women had to do things this way, unfortunately. Just like in the courts of the monarchies, women always had to work behind the scenes, scheming to accomplish their goals. Obviously, I have many, many thoughts about this, so let me know if you would like me to do a separate episode to expand on all of that. So I tell you that whole story so that you'll understand the mindset that I was in when these messages resurfaced. The stories in the messages line up very, very closely with the story that I had already put together in my head. So to me, they immediately felt familiar, and I fully believed them from that point forward. My friend Lexa, Simp of the Sapphics on TikTok, was also speaking about the messages, and we were talking in DMs about them as well. While I was going strictly on vibes, Lexa was smart enough to connect the stories to the I Can See You music video and the Karma music video. After that, quite a few people on TikTok have been following these messages in comment sections, on my Discord, my Patreon, and of course on Spaderiddles Tumblr too. I did a 3 or 4 part series when they first resurfaced, and I've done a few updates since then. I rewatched them recently, and those still hold up. So I'll link the TikTok playlist in the description, and I will also add them at the end of the YouTube version of this podcast if you want to check them out. Lexa isn't an active Taylor fan anymore, but she is still following these messages, and she had some great videos about them originally, so I'll link her in the description too. I have put the messages on my website, UnderthePink7.com, so that you can read through them yourself if you want, and I'll also have them on the screen for the YouTube version. If you guys are interested, I can do a follow-up episode reanalyzing the story based on the information that we got with Tortured Poets Department. For this episode, I'm going to read the stories, and for the YouTube version, I will put the lyrics on the screen that correspond with the part of the story I'm talking about. Some lines and connections will be a lot more obvious than others, but I'm going to go ahead and include all of them because some things become more connected with the more information that we receive, so I'd rather just be thorough now. There isn't a way to show those on the podcast, obviously, but if you've been binging ttpd like I have, you will definitely be able to recognize certain scenes and lines as we go through them in the stories. To start, though, I'm going to talk about a few of the most obvious ones so that you can decide ahead of time if it's even worth continuing to listen. Hello, this is me a month later interrupting you while I edit this to let you know that I put little pink neon stars next to the phrases and words that I think are the most convincing and the most hard to explain away. And just keep in mind when you're reading these that if a person was faking these messages, they would have had the foresight an entire year ago to use this exact phrasing and these exact words and to tell these exact stories all the way back then. So if you look at it bigger picture, not just the words and phrases that I'm matching up, but the bigger picture of the stories that these messages are telling and the stories that she told in Tortured Poets, I think you'll see that it's a crazy amount of connections that at this point, there's just absolutely no way can be fake, in my opinion. Anyway, I spent an ungodly amount of time doing this. So if you enjoy this video, if you reference it, if you tell people about it, please give me credit, link to it, like this video, follow, subscribe, all that stuff. I would appreciate it so much. Okay, back to the video. So to begin, in the first message, they write about her heel breaking. Then her heel actually broke on stage on the same night that she sang Me. It was 11:20, which is another 112 if you follow the 112 theory. Then we have the story of a museum heist. It describes the I Can See You music video pretty closely. Later on, they describe blowing the seeds of a dandelion, which then makes it to her enemies. This is very similar to the Karma music video scene with the purple dust and the 3 reapers. The Karma music video didn't come out until 2 weeks after these messages were posted. They also describe having friends of friends who are into music, and the way they phrase it is connecting to the New Romantics theory. But especially notable to me is the use of words repeated 3 times throughout the story. They use drip, 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 blow, 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 human, 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 and other words too, a total of 7 or 8 times throughout the stories. In Taylor's Time magazine interview, she said that when recovering from shows in high heels, her feet go crunch, crunch, crunch. This stood out to me right away because of the odd phrasing. So then we got the promo for Tortured Poets, where she said the tick, tick, tick of love bombs. This is not a normal way that Taylor speaks, and from that moment forward, I was pretty certain that the messages were absolutely real. I think that's way more than a coincidence. But once Tortured Poets dropped, Emma from my Discord reached out to say that Taylor had posted cinnamon buns coming out of the oven in her Fortnite challenge video. And that reminded Emma of these messages. Buns in the oven are mentioned more than once in the stories. So when they went to look, they realized that right after the part about the buns, the story said, "Why would someone you believe to have wings need a parachute?" Which of course is a near direct quote of the albatross, which says that she would spread her wings like a parachute. Next we have the bolter, which says, "She fell through the ice and came out alive." The second story in the series begins with a woman in an ice castle who crashes through the ice. So she fell through the ice and came out alive. As you can see, there are way too many connections to be someone random just making up and sending these messages. We can talk more about why she would post these and what they mean in the Discord, my Patreon, my TikTok. And like I said, I will make a post on Instagram and Twitter so that we can discuss them. And let me know if you want me to talk more about these messages here. But let's finally just get into it. The messages start on May 13th, 2023, and they start when Taylor is in Philadelphia, which of course is notable. That is a hometown show for her. That day, she sang Forever and Always and This Love. Imagine this. You are riding your bike, a long, intense ride that you have trained for and mapped out each turn and gear shift. Then you notice something up ahead, an unexpected new variable in your way. You attempt to slow down, but you realize your brakes have been cut. In a panic, you drag your foot on the ground to stop, stop, stop. You hardly slow, and now your shoe is ruined. Foot scraped, a heel damaged. As the sparks fly from speeding tires, things are accelerating more quickly than you had planned. You needed a diversion, a way to slow down so your remaining steps would line up on time. Will it be worth the pain you sustained in your attempts to keep things on track? This was not a message about bikes, but it is a message to be ready closely. It does say ready and not red. Message number 2, submitted the next day, May 14th, 2023, and we got 3 different messages that day. She was still in Philadelphia, and that day she sang Hey Steven and The Best Day. Imagine this. You are on the balcony of an ice castle, pushing and pushing against the railing, slowly trudging towards a horizon that never seems to get any closer, smashing against the frozen structure that is so solid it feels like glass, so solid it feels like it will never break. The time draws near, springtime sunshine causing small drips and fractures. You strike a match and blow the smoke towards the structure that shelters and protects you. Suddenly, you hear a crack, a crunch, a whoosh. There is a sudden give beneath you, and you tumble through the broken, melting hole in your palace. You have finally smashed through the ice castle. It was so slow, and then suddenly, so all of a sudden. You thought that it would take much longer to arrive in this moment. However, in this suddenness, you find yourself still somehow underprepared, kicking yourself for the time you squandered by wallowing in the seeming endlessness of your predicament. All this time spent inching towards a finish line. No time at all spent readying for an end. Shit. In midair, you scramble for a parachute. You will reach the ground either way, whether you float like a feather or free fall like a meteor. But after all this time, you decide you'd like to land softly, rather than crash in a tangle of broken limbs and fiery shock. Dear reader, I'm sure this tale has raised a question. Why would someone you believe to have wings need a parachute? Message number 3, submitted the same day in Philly. Imagine this, a diamond heist. Dressed in your wife's black leather and the mask of an illusionist, you've impeccably plotted your way into the museum, somersaulting past ancient artifacts, stopping only to admire a statue or two. On silent feet, you arrive at the display you've come for. Encased in glass, there lies a mirror. The reflection inside is rightly yours, and yet you've had to immorally earn your chance to claim it, to have and to hold it. Your team works quickly and quietly. You've made it unscathed. Almost. Mere feet away from the light of freedom, someone you recognize steps from the shadows and cruelly removes your mask, revealing your true identity before you intended, threatening to reveal it to a wider audience before you intended. For all that you are a mastermind, it seems you are not outsmartable. And yet you cannot bring yourself to give the mirror back. Your getaway bike begins to leave without you, sparks flying as the tires try and fail to slow down for you. You have frozen in this moment of indecision, but your hesitation was a decision all its own. This person may try to beat you to the punch by revealing your true face to the world, or perhaps your best laid plans will still fall into place like dominoes after all. However, that's a risk you no longer have the luxury of taking, and so it's a good thing you always keep a pack of matches on you. Message number 4, and this was the 3rd message submitted on May 14th. I cannot share my role in this chess game, but friends have friends of friends. I, for one, love my friends and their friends. I wonder if you know any of them? In magic, there is a sleight of hand, redirection of the eye. None of my messages have been about a rumored new boy toy. He is not the pivot. He is not the brake. He is not the parachute. Behind every public figure, every business transaction that makes up its image, there is a human heart that beats red and hot and furious. Sometimes those emotions don't line up with what's so easily seen. It takes a lifetime of mastering the art of biting your tongue until it bleeds, all while feeding the world a blinding smile. That is the story these messages portray. The messy story, the metaphorical story, the true but oh so shrouded story. The story of the person behind the curtain, and the person that person loves fiercely. Think of these messages as smoke signals. I may not be around this blog for long, but I have my reasons for painting the pictures I do when I'm here. In time, all of the pieces fall right into place. A jack-o'-lantern by any other name is still a jack-o'-lantern. Speaking of, I love Halloween, don't you? I'm already counting the days until October. Message number 5, submitted on May 15th. There were no shows that day. Imagine this. You are in a kitchen. Not your kitchen, of course. Your kitchen is soft and cozy and sacred. This kitchen is hard and cold and purely functional. You work tirelessly, sweat pooling on your brow, to make this meal, assisted by a team of chefs. It's an ambitious feast in the making, and everyone must play their role without flaw or hesitation. You're set to debut an exclusive menu, never before seen. Its value is in the secrecy as much as in the flavors themselves. An oven timer goes off, and another. You turn, drawn by the smell of smoke and a spike of worry. Someone is leaving early, abandoning their station. They stuff a recipe card in their pocket as they go. Hey, you shout, but their mind won't be changed. They are bowing out, leaving you with double the workload, now half burnt and smoking. Their duties weren't finished, and yet there is nothing you can do to make them stay. Shaken by this loss, chaos descends upon the team. Most roll up their sleeves to work harder. You will love these people eternally, unspeakably grateful for their loyalty. Some strip from their aprons and follow the first traitor out the golden door. But you have never been one to lay your armor down. When you fail gloriously. When you go kicking and screaming. The cherry red telephone on the wall rings, and it is with intuitive dread that you answer the call. You recognize the voice, of course you do. If you still somehow manage to serve that secret menu, it won't be before the entire world already knows every dish, every ingredient. You want to call their bluff. This threat has been made 1,000 times by 1,000 others, and yet people line up around the block for your restaurant, never swayed. But this time is different because you know this person actually has the means to share the secret menu, and that they have enough proof to make the awaiting guests believe them. Of course they do. You saw them take the recipe card with your own eyes. Another oven timer goes off. Message number 6, also submitted on May 15th. To those who have requested I give some kind of sign or signal to prove my validity, I see you. In fact, I am one step ahead. If you read my messages closely and hold them to the light in the coming unfoldings, I think you will find many connections and foretellings. I have a feeling we all share a similar taste in music. Watch for words and phrases I use that might ring a bell, B-E-L-L-E. It is a fine line to walk, proving to you that I am here, and yet leaving no trace. I am the metaphor. I am the apparition. I am the line of poetry you read years ago, but cannot remember distinctly enough to cite. I cannot force you to trust me, and I admire your discernment and awareness. It is those very traits that have allowed you to see the story you have all these years. The story of two princesses. No place for a prince, despite the spotlight that shines on him. One day, people will say you're the lucky ones. All I can ask of you is this: to have an open mind, rolling new ideas over in your thoughts and keeping only what feels right. To hear what I say, even if you must hold it gently until things come more clearly into focus. And to have patience as, layer by painstaking layer, the picture is painted. Already, I am grateful for the ways you have read into my messages. Fact and truth can be two different things. For example, this is a pumpkin, and it is also a jack-o'-lantern. Message number 7, submitted May 16th. No shows that day. Imagine this. You are walking through your yard. It's one of your favorite places, all sprawling garden rows and vibrant green grass. There are herbs for cooking and spell casting. There are daisies, so many daisies in every shade of your rainbow. Up ahead, you spot a small cropping of weeds and set your foot on each stepping stone of the path that leads right to them. The house is a little further now, but you are still within the confines of your tall and impenetrable fence. Nothing comes through that fence, not now and not ever. Within it, you are safe. Your lover and your fresh-baked buns are safe. The buns, of course, are in the oven turning golden as you speak. It's an old family recipe, jotted lovingly on a recipe card. You reach the weeds and pluck a dandelion. Caught up in a moment of buoyant, childlike whimsy, you make a wish and blow, blow, blow. Hundreds of featherly florets scatter. You laugh. You watch as they ride the breeze, one floret in particular. It drifts and dances like all the others, but as the wind changes direction, it swoops over the fence. You lose sight of it and send a silent apology to whoever ends up with a cropping of dandelions in their yard. Did you know that dandelions don't need to be purposefully planted all at once? All it takes is for one small seed to catch on the breeze, and by then it has spread irreversibly. You never know where the initial seed came from because it has started so small and floated so far. You swallow, staring at the fence. It was you who blew the dandelion in the first place. It was you who ventured too closely to the edge of the garden. It was chance and weather that landed it where it did. You breathe in and deep and out, expelling the growing anxiety from your body. You turn back to the house. You have those homemade buns to tend to, after all. But as you reach the door, you can't help but cast a furtive glance over your shoulder to the spot where that dandelion floret disappeared. You can never blame someone for the dandelions that sprout in your grass. It's untraceable and irrelevant. They all come from the same place anyway, a private moment performed too near the property line. Of course, the recipient would pluck the weeds so unwittingly planted. Of course, they too would blow, 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 and spread the florets far and wide. Once you blow a dandelion, you never get it back. It isn't yours anymore. Message number 8, submitted on May 16th. Imagine this. You're a selfish asshole. So much of your fear is your own. You wince at your cowardice like it is a gaping wound. You so often find yourself unable to meet your own eyes. You scramble into shadows like a black cat, scared even of being scared. This is a moment where things shift. Your ship is docked too far out to sea. You'd swim to it, but the waters are infested with sharks. Your life raft is long deflated. Your team is cornered on the dock, surrounded by bad guys and bystanders. Each time they step forward, your crew is shuffled back, crashing waves and gnashing jaws behind you. You glare at the enemy protectively, blocking your beloved crew from view. The enemy twists a fluffy dandelion in their fingers, already a few florets taking off in the breeze. You whimper as you watch them go, and with a sneer of amusement, the enemy offers you a deal. If you jump into the water, we won't lay a finger on anyone else. We won't even take the rubies. You step forward without hesitation, accepting the deal. The enemy just laughs. Not you, her. Your lover steps out in front of you, ready to face the music, ready to pay for your crimes. She was always the one who was ready. You were the one who was scared, the one who overstayed your welcome in this coastal town, the one who got everyone into this mess. And now the enemy who has chased you round the seas finally has you cornered. And all they want is one final sacrifice. One final act of courage from the woman who has already displayed more than enough integrity. You kiss her goodbye and step forward. Take me instead, you assert. Not an offer, a demand. Lightning crackles in the sky, reflecting your emotions exactly. Your lover grabs your hand, yanking you back, refusing to let you go. Not even to save herself. Not even to save the precious little gemstones nestled deep in her pocket. Just you. You tug against her grasp, mind made up. You are a selfish asshole, except for maybe just this once. To ensure the safety of those you love, you would dive off the dock willingly, 10 times over and over. You would relish in the crunch of your bones between great white teeth. You have always craved destruction, scrawled devil horns on photos of yourself. This is different. It has to be. The enemy accepts your deal, glee filling their eyes as if this is what they wanted all along. Perhaps it is. You are a coward, but you are not a fool. You make mistakes, but never the same one twice. You are not a hero. You never have been, and you never will be. You're a selfish asshole. But there are some people in this world worth breaking character for. And so, in one swift motion, you replace the solid boards beneath your feet with rushing deep blue water. Message number 9, submitted May 17th. And this year, she is in Stockholm, Sweden at Friends Stadium. It's worth noting that the weekend at Stockholm is the one weekend that I have been seriously clowning for, other than obviously her birthday. So I think these messages being submitted on May 17th are worth noting. Imagine this. You are sitting on a beach, cold and windswept. The sea is dark and angry before you. The sun sets in muted colors. You finish scrawling on the parchment. Your pen dries up as you reach the end of a story in 11 parts. None of it is making sense anyway. You're sick of having to dilute everything so far beyond recognition. But a story told through metaphor is still a story told. Even the great poet Sappho is survived by stilted fragments and mistranslated lyrics. Maybe that is the beautiful curse people like us must all share. Perhaps loving someone the world doesn't approve of forces you to be clever. You scan your writing once over, brow furrowed. All you can do is hope that it is enough. Of course it's not, and never could be. You know this. And yet you keep trying. Your image is 10 times bigger than you are. You have spent your life living in your own shadow, stealing your own thunder, trying and failing relentlessly to fill your own shoes. You roll the parchment, slipping it into an empty wine bottle. You may have told the story inside out and backwards, and it may well sink to the bottom of the sea or fall on deaf ears. It may wash up on a sunny beach in Florida or a rocky shore in the Northwest. Either way, someone somewhere will know about that recipe card and the warm safety you cherish within your fence and the heist that stole more from you than you ever planned on stealing from the museum. And most importantly, they will know about the human heart, the flawed, scarred, angry, grateful, nonsensical heart, the one that hides deep inside glittering ball gowns, the one that questions everything, but mostly it questions if the world it has grimaced through so many smiles for would love it for what it truly is. You drop the message in a bottle into the riptide. You fight every urge to fish it out before it drifts too far. You watch it until the waves have swept it far, far away. And now it is just a matter of time. The dripping of candle wax, the ticking of a clock. Message number 10, also submitted on May 17th. Imagine this. You wander through the woods. Deep in this enchanted forest, your delicate fairy wings are crippled and weak. You haven't come this way in a long time. You're not sure you'll be able to find it. You trip over overgrown roots and foliage that look suspiciously like clawing hands in the dying light. A howl sounds in the distance, pushing you closer to your destination. Watchful eyes in the birch bark feel more leering than protective. Your ripped and muddied gown is caked in dandelion fuzz. You limp over uneven ground, smiling at the pain of the shark bite with every excruciating step, replaying the satisfying splash as you finally chose her over the world, as you grabbed the enemy and dove into the infested waters. You squint to make sense of your surroundings through the fog, cherry red eyes glowing in the bushes. Just before you nearly give up, you see it ahead. The wooden door standing sovereign in the middle of the forest, deeply cut claw marks near its surface. Glittering flecks of what could be light filter through the crack beneath it. The best and worst part of all, the lock lies broken, scorched, down on the ground. To put it plainly, your limits are now your own courage. Nothing more and nothing less. All your life you have been afraid. Afraid of ghosts, shadows, and raindrops on tin roofs. It is a fear that has paralyzed you. And yet now, in the face of something actually worthy of your fear, you find peace and courage. You step forward. You place a hand on the doorknob, the metal cold against your fiery skin. Insecurity and hope pound in your ears, in tune with your heartbeat. Never in your wildest dreams did you actually believe you would arrive here. Human, human, human. The darkest parts of your mind chant. It burns like hot coals, but the longer you stand there, hand on the doorknob, the softer the voice becomes. Not softer in volume. If anything, the voice is louder now, but softer in tone. Who doesn't love a good key change? Human, human, human. It no longer sounds like the weakness it used to. It no longer sounds like a flaw. Your heart beats red and hot and furious in your chest. Isn't that a magnificent thing? A knock sounds on the door from the other side. You smile at the signal as your feet squash the forest carpet of clovers and daisies. With the deepest exhale of your life so far, you slowly twist the handle. Message number 11, submitted May 18th. And of course, this year on May 18th, she is in Stockholm. Imagine this. It is 3 a.m. and Halloween is over. Costumes have been taken off and packed away in boxes, perhaps to be taken out again next year if they haven't been outgrown. Empty candy bowls sit on entryway tables. Toilet paper hangs strung across wilted lawns and barren tree branches. Sheep have removed their wolf's clothing with relief. Masqueraders with masks removed, mermaids who have traded tails for sweatpants. A woman walks down the center of an empty suburban street, shaking from the cold. She peers around with wild, that's W-I-L-D-E, curious eyes as if she's seeing the world for the first time. She is drenched in salt water as if she has just crawled from the ocean. She wears an odd combination of tattered clothing, remnants of a fantastical gown and a comfortable sweatshirt that doesn't quite make sense. There's something very odd about her. Nevertheless, she simply walks down the street. Finally, she reaches a house that looks like all the others, but it is not like the others, because it is hers. There are figures in the window anxiously awaiting her return home. With a warm smile cracking the shell-shocked exterior of her face, she ascends the porch stairs. There is a jack-o'-lantern perched by the front door. There is a tea light candle at its center, the dancing glow casting shadows from deep within the carved, jagged-toothed smile. And as she watches, the flame finally flickers out. There was one last message that was posted in May of 2023, message number 12. She was playing in Foxborough that night, and that is a really significant place for Taylor. Foxborough was the city that she was playing in on the night that Scooter Braun and Scott Borchetta met for the first time, when Justin Bieber was opening for Taylor 20 years ago. On that night last year, the same night that the final message was posted, she played Better Man and Shoulda Said No. The last message reads simply, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye for now. And it ends with a jack-o'-lantern emoji. That feels pretty significant. Just for reference, the next night she played Question and Invisible. So we were obviously all waiting for something to happen on Halloween, especially since these messages resurfaced in mid-October. Nothing major did that we know of, but the author returned to post one last message on October 31st. Message number 13. You didn't think I'd forget to stop by on Halloween, did you? The entirety of the story I came to tell is within my previous 12 messages, but I suppose one more tale couldn't hurt. Imagine this. The tornado begins with the smallest shift in the wind. The fashion line begins with a single stitch. The message in a bottle begins with a single letter scrawled desperately on parchment. The field of weeds begins with the smallest seed blown over the fence or sown in defense. The home stretch begins with what looks identical to all the steps taken before, but it is not as it has been before, and it is not what it will ever be again. No. The moment is new and sovereign and special, pregnant with possibility. The glass overflowing all at once after a maddeningly constant drip, drip, drip. Just like that shift in the wind, just like that stitch, just like that parchment, and just like that seed, I am not yet what I will one day be. And also, I am, because I will one day be it. So on this night of All Hallows Eve, as the veil between this life and the next is thinner than ever, I whisper to you, the finish line is closer than it may appear. Transformation is imminent. Hold on to your blind faith a moment longer now, and remember that reputation is illusion, expectation the magician. I hope you get more treats than tricks in your orange pumpkin-shaped pails. You are all truly dear to me. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. And also, hello. So, quite a story, huh? Obviously, even if you're just listening on the podcast and weren't able to see the dozens and dozens of lyrical references that played on the screen on the YouTube, there were so many connections in these messages. Even just I'm feeling like the last drops of an ink pen. And this message, when she's talking about writing and putting messages in a bottle where her pen runs out of ink, there are just so many. Also, I talked about her heel breaking on the night that she sang Me. Well, she also sang So It Goes that night. And those lyrics are referenced multiple times in the story. Or how it mentions washing up on a sunny beach in Florida. And obviously, there is a Florida reference in Fortnite and an entire song called Florida on ttpd. And of course, the reference of the friends who have friends was very interesting when thinking about the New Romantics. And of course, it mentions Fine Line. So we have Harry, but it also mentions a Pink song and some other lyrics that connect to other artists. I'm very interested to see if any of you guys have recognized words or lyrics from other artists in the stories. When the stories have said to pay attention to the words and phrases that she uses to see if others have used them. I have definitely seen that in Billie Eilish's most recent Rolling Stone interview. She uses words and phrases that can connect directly to these stories and to the words and phrasing that Taylor uses. Anyway, lots of connections, many more than I believe someone could make up or fictionalize or use this to play some elaborate hoax. I just don't see how that is possible. Honestly, even though I have thought that these messages were authentic since October, having this much proof is kind of blowing my mind. These messages are intense and they tell a really dark story, and that makes me sad for Taylor. I also think that many of us who have been invested in these stories and have thought that they were real think about them very often. I know people mention that to me all the time. They are stories that many of us have read over and over and over and have just kind of always been in the back of my head, at least. And I think that that is a huge reason why ttpd immediately felt so connected for me. It made perfect sense to me. I think that ttpd helps make these messages make so much more sense, but I think these messages help ttpd make so much more sense as well. Once you accept that these messages are authentic or telling an authentic story, however you interpret that story, a lot more falls into place. And ttpd as a whole makes so much more sense. I find it really interesting that even knowing how toxic the music industry can be and how much rampant abuse happens in the industry, Taylor is usually never included in that conversation outside of the scope of what happened with her masters. Everyone knows how much abuse Justin Bieber has suffered or how much abuse that Britney Spears has suffered. Most people recognize how much that artists are dealing with and have dealt with behind the scenes. But a lot of people seemed very taken aback by the anger and animosity that Taylor showed in ttpd. I saw that there was a few viral tweets talking about the asylum where you raised me, and people were circulating the picture of her, mansion that she grew up in, and not connecting at all to the asylum being the music industry and laughing that off. And I don't know if that's because she can do it with a smile on her face, because she makes it look easy, because she didn't act out like so many people do. It's just assumed that she somehow evaded all of that because she did have family around, or because she has always put out such a put together image. I'm not sure, but she's never included on any of those conversations. And as someone who started her career so young and was surrounded by those same people, she was in a lot of the hip hop circles. She was very closely connected to Justin through Selena and on his own for a while. She was also close with Britney at the very, very start of her career. I talked about that 8 or 9 months ago about Britney and Taylor sharing a manager. And then when the lawsuit resurfaced a few months ago and the Scott Swift email kind of went a little semi-viral, Dan Dimtro is the man that he was addressing those emails to. And that is the manager that Taylor shared with Britney. Just a few years later, she had to watch publicly as Britney went through what she went through with the media, with the industry, with her family. Brittany shaved her head, I believe it was in 2007. So Taylor watched that happen to someone that she had, at least at one point, cared about. And that had to have shaped how she felt about the media and the industry as a whole pretty early on. So I think that ttpd talks a lot more about the industry and all the things that she has experienced more than people are attributing to that. There's a lot more on there about herself and the industry than a lot of people are noticing or than a lot of people are recognizing. I think a lot of us who were paying attention and were expecting this artist rights movement to go in the direction of exposing the industry, and we are seeing this happen live in action. So a lot of us who were following this story were not surprised. We expected there to be a lot of industry stuff on ttpd. How many times can I say ttpd? In my own Tortured Poets predictions, I said I thought that there would be songs about the fans, and they're rolling it, are rolling it, and of course about the industry and all of that kind of stuff. So when Tortured Poets came out, it was really very similar to what a lot of us expected. I think in that same vein, Tortured Poets tells us that she is willing to put it all on the line in order to go after her happiness, whatever that is. And the stories do talk about a wife and all of that stuff. I very strongly think a lot of it is Taylor as her own muse, her inner self, whether that is simply her queer self, whether there is some sort of gender conflict happening, whatever it is that younger Taylor, the Taylor inside, whoever she is speaking to a lot of the time, is the person that she loves that is ruining her life. That's just my interpretation. But anyway, I do feel pretty strongly that everything from last year is relevant to this year and can be pulled forward to this year. All of the theories and dates that we were clowning for last year that seemed very solid, that had so much to back them up, and then nothing happened, and it seemed like anticlimactic. I think that those theories should be brought forward to this year and be re-examined if they were on like specific dates. She showed us in the Eras Tour Mastermind choreography that she was going around one time and then reversing and going back the other way. We have seen a million references to inside out, backwards, reverse, flip it, karma coming back around, the infinity sign, 2 years. With the release of ttpd, the buildup of everything, and the way things have been going with the Eras Tour, it definitely feels like she's been building up to something big. I am super excited to see what that is. We've already had a lot of exposure in the industry over the last year, and I feel strongly that Taylor and the New Romantics have been tied to a lot of that. My next official episode is about the recent rap battle and everything that's been happening in hip hop and how it connects to the New Romantics. I've been following the hip hop story for quite a while and was trying to figure out how that was going to connect with the other story that's been happening, the pop story and even the country story. And this happened in a much bigger and more explosive way than I ever could have imagined, but I'm very excited to talk about it. I actually did already record a podcast about it, and my computer crashed and I lost everything. And at the same time, got very, very sick. So that episode is coming in the next couple of days. It just had to be redone, and we are going to get back on track on the podcast. I have some guests scheduled, lots of exciting things happening. I do want to mention that there are other anonymous messages submitted under different emojis to the same blog. I haven't had the time to fully dive into those. Some of them do seem authentic based on some of the clues and things they've said and have matched up with some of the lyrical stuff that's come out, but I have not dedicated the time to deciphering them and proving their validity the same way that I have on these. But they are also on my website posted if you want to check them out and let me know if you want me to analyze them too. There is already a channel on our Discord to talk about the pumpkin messages, so you can go there and see what our theories have been up until this point and how they're evolving. I will also create an Instagram and a Twitter post to have discussions there. I'm UnderthePink7 everywhere. My links will also always be in the description. We would love to hear your analysis and theories of the messages. We've been talking about them for months and months. Fresh ideas are always welcome. Let me know if you all want me to do the follow-up episode breaking down what I think the messages mean, breaking down what I think the pumpkin messages mean. But remember, on YouTube, I'll add the videos that I've already made about the messages at the end of this video, and I'll link the TikTok playlist below if you're listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider leaving a positive review. I am new here, so I would love to establish some reviews, and consider joining my Patreon. I have a free tier, a $2 tier, and a $5 tier. It's really affordable. If you're looking for community, the Discord is also an amazing place for that. There are always people hanging out there, and there's so much information there about theories and different discussions that we're having about all kinds of things, trying to compile different theories and information on all of the stuff that happens in the Taylor universe and with all of the new romantics artists as well. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.